All right, session 9, as we forgive our debtors. The power of forgiveness works both ways. First, as an important step in reconciling with somebody else, and second, as a way of letting go of the weight of your grudge against somebody. 2 Corinthians chapter 2 says this, "But if anyone has caused pain, he has caused it not to me, but to some extent, not to exaggerate it, to all of you. This punishment by the majority is enough for such a person. So now instead you should forgive and console him, so that he may not be overwhelmed by excessive sorrow. So I urge you to reaffirm your love for him. I wrote for this reason, to test you and to know whether you are obedient in everything. Anyone whom you forgive, I also forgive. What I have forgiven, if I have forgiven anything, has been for your sake in the presence of Christ. And we do this so that we may not be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs." So what Paul's talking about here in this passage is that whenever somebody does something wrong against somebody else, there's something that happens there where you may feel offended, you may feel hurt, something to that effect. Kind of like in our previous session, we were talking about sin and how sin damages the image that we were created in. Likewise, when you go out and you sin and you say some mean things and hurt people, that sin doesn't just hurt you, it hurts them, and there's some damages that are done there. And so part of this process of being reconciled to one another requires both the perpetrator and the victim to come to some sort of understanding of what has happened. And I think the best way to kind of understand one another and to move on from the hurt is to just let things go and to forgive things. Now, that isn't to say that you let everything go, right? There has to be some kind of conversation about what happened in order to like really move on. But at some point, if you don't want that grudge to build up inside of you of like, oh yeah, well, so and so called me a jerk last week, and I'm not going to be their friend ever again. It's like, well, that person might have moved on with their life, and they're not really thinking about you and paying much mind to you, or not calling you anything anymore, but you still have that feeling that of what they've done that's on your heart. And so that's what I'm talking about by letting go of something is to kind of see what people have done against you and as just a mistake. And we all make mistakes, and that's kind of this whole thing of what Christianity is kind of about. It's kind of coming to some understanding that human beings are what? Human. Yeah. We're flawed, imperfect. We screw up all the time. And so we really shouldn't be holding a whole lot of stuff against one another. And in order to get past that, in order to have peace in this life, we need the power of forgiveness. So you might ask, well, if Jesus has forgiven everybody, why do we need to forgive them? Well, if we want to build a lasting and trusting relationship with somebody, we can't hold something against them. It's kind of what I was saying. Forgiveness removes barriers that might exist when somebody offends you or hurts you in some way. And so we forgive others so that we can love them without conditions. Well, are there people who don't deserve forgiveness? I think only God knows who they really are. We don't know if somebody doesn't deserve forgiveness. It's not really our place to judge people that way. John 3:17 says, "For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him." And because God is spirit, his worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. Anyone who hates the spirit or truth is guilty of an eternal sin. Mark, as Mark 3:28 to 29 says, "Truly I tell you, people will be forgiven for their sins and whatever blasphemies they utter, but whoever blasphemies against the Holy Spirit can never have forgiveness, but is guilty of an eternal sin." So this idea of an eternal sin is something that only God really has the authority and power to hold against somebody else. All other kind of sins are going to be forgiven. And if Jesus has forgiven these sins, then we should too, probably. Uh, Not probably, we just should, right? It's like we should just try to find as much power as we can to just move on, let things go, and to forgive people after some understanding is made. And so this leads to our kind of last question is, well, what if we don't want to do this? What if we don't want to forgive somebody and let something go and just want to hold on to it? Well, whenever you refuse to do this, whenever you refuse to forgive somebody, it's the same thing as canceling them. And you might not think this is a problem in your own personal life, but if enough people do it, then it will transform our culture. And it kind of already has. Cancel culture is a real thing. There's people who get fired and removed from their job and punished over just saying, sure, idiotic and hurtful things on Twitter or whatever. But they're just words at the end of the day. And yet, people are just getting destroyed. Their careers are getting wrecked. Their reputation is getting wrecked just over some dumb things that they've said. And surprise, people are dumb, right? They're going to say dumb things. And so that's kind of where our culture is right now with the level of forgiveness that we're willing to extend others. We're very harsh. And if we're going to change the culture, if we want to improve society, if we want to be salt and light, as we'll get into in a later session, then we're going to have a culture of grace so that people can be forgiven, learn from their mistakes, and grow. And that's what it's all about. I'll see you in the next one.